The main news of today is the extraordinary story in the Daily Telegraph about the leak of thousands of messages from Matt Hancock within his office about how the COVID restrictions were being handled. And there have been all sorts of issues coming up from this and allegations that we'll be discussing. But incidentally, I've been included in this about a test that was sent to me or to one of my children. What happened was that one of my children needed a test, and that put everybody into quarantine. But unfortunately, the testing people lost it. And that meant I was quarantined, unable to do my job as a government minister, for several days until it was admitted that this had been lost. At that point, it was raised with the Department of Health, and they decided to send a test to a member of my family so the test could be carried out. Not something I asked for. So if I received any special treatment, it wasn't because I had requested it, but actually it allowed a government minister to get back to work with a child that didn't have COVID in the first place, who wouldn't have needed a special test had the system actually been working. But I accept it wasn't working for other people too. But let's get back to what happened when the outbreak began. In the internet informational blizzard of early 2020, the world changed and our nation changed. The pictures coming from China, then Italy, suggested that we faced a threat the likes of which we had not known for generations. In such a fast-paced, interconnected world, global travel, our island nation, once that fortress built by nature for herself against infection and the hand of war, can unfortunately no longer escape the misfortunes of less happier lands so easily. As the first duty of a government is to keep the country secure and its citizens safe, we took the counsel of experts who told us, in no uncertain terms, that if we did not take the radical steps they were demanding, we'd expect mass death. 500,000 deaths were being forecast. The crematoriums were going to be overrun. Under these conditions, any responsible Prime Minister would have ordered the first lockdown. But as early as June 2020, the advice of the health authorities increasingly did not match the reality. The danger was not as severe as they had been forecasting. But yet businesses were still being crushed. Essential medical interventions were missed. Lives were ruined. Children were quite wrongly denied their schooling, and spouses were separated at the hour of their death, unable to utter their final goodbyes to each other face to face. So I and several other cabinet members began to raise questions. The Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, deserves a great deal of credit for taking the brave and correct step not to lock down for the Omicron variant, despite the cries, the same cries as before, of much of the press, the experts, and of course, Mr. Snoozefest or Sir Keir Snoozefest and the opposition benches. England is the mother of parliaments. No place on earth has contributed to the development of liberty, democracy, and the dignity of mankind more so than that of the building behind me. And yet, shamefully, for some months, many months, its corridors and chambers, which once played host to Peel, to Gladstone, to Disraeli, to Churchill, to Lady Thatcher, enacted policies that stripped basic liberties from British subjects that should and are their birthrights. This is what the COVID inquiry must focus on. The technicalities of COVID policy, such as the procurement of medical equipment or PPE, or the testing or non-testing of care home patients, are not irrelevant, but the inquiry should not be directed towards them. It must focus on the devastating, incalculable consequences of putting the whole country effectively under house arrest. Lockdown must never happen again.